The dust blew across the empty Texas plains like a restless ghost, and every creak of the broken windmill reminded him just how poor and alone he truly was. Eli Carter, a struggling rancher with nothing but a few dying cattle and a mortgage breathing down his neck, had reached the bitter edge of desperation. He wasn't a bad man, just a man beaten down by hard seasons and harder luck. The bank was coming for his land, and he had only weeks left before his father's ranch slipped away into another man's hands. But then came the letter, a strange offer delivered in the form of neat handwriting, sealed with wax. A woman seeking marriage, promising companionship, and more importantly, money. She had a dowry large enough to save his ranch. Eli had never imagined himself the kind of man who'd take a wife for money, but hunger and foreclosure had a way of twisting a man's pride. He told himself it was only practical, only survival. A deal, nothing more. He rode into town the morning she arrived by train, his boots worn thin and his heart heavier than his saddle. Folks whispered when they saw him standing at the platform, and when the whistle screamed and the black iron engine came to a stop, Eli braced himself. She stepped down from the car in a dark blue dress stretched tight across her body, her frame far heavier than any woman he had ever seen. The hat upon her head seemed too small, her cheeks flushed crimson, her breath short from the simple effort of walking. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, some cruel chuckles, others whispers laced with pity. Eli's throat went dry. This was her, Mary Ann Whitlock, the stranger he had agreed to marry. She was obese, yes, larger than life in a way that turned every head at the station. But there was something else too, an unshakable boldness in her eyes, a strange fire that silenced the mockery around her. She met Eli's gaze without flinching, and for the first time, he wondered if he'd underestimated what was walking into his life. Their wedding was a quiet affair, no music, no laughter. Just a preacher, two witnesses, and a taste of duty on Eli's tongue. He told himself it didn't matter, she had the money, and it meant his ranch would survive. But as they rode back to his land, silence pressing between them, Eli couldn't ignore the nagging thought, what kind of woman crosses the country to marry a stranger? Mary Ann was unlike any woman he'd ever known. She didn't complain about the rough cabin or the meager meals. She moved through the house like she'd always belonged there, her presence filling every corner. At night, she sat by the fire with a book in her hands while Eli pretended to work on ledgers, stealing glances at the woman who was now his wife. He had expected her to be weak, fragile, needy. Instead, she was sharp-tongued, clever, and shockingly blunt. On their third night, as Eli tried to make polite conversation, she cut him off with a smirk. "You only married me for the ranch," she said, her voice steady as a stone. "Don't bother denying it." Eli froze, shame burning his face. But before he could answer, she leaned closer, her eyes narrowing. "You think I came all this way for romance? I came for something too, Eli Carter. And you'll learn soon enough." Those words haunted him. What could she possibly want from a penniless rancher? What was she hiding behind that unshakable stare? As the weeks passed, Eli began to notice things. Strange visitors arriving at night, men who spoke to Mary Ann in hushed tones by the barn. A locked trunk she kept by their bed, one she never let him near. He told himself it wasn't his concern, but suspicion gnawed at him. Then came the night he couldn't ignore. He woke to the sound of boots outside, his rifle in hand. Slipping quietly to the door, he saw Mary Ann standing in the yard beneath the moonlight, her dress whipping in the wind. 3 armed men stood before her, their horses restless, their voices sharp. "You promised us, Mary," one of them growled. "Don't think you can play both sides." Eli's blood ran cold. Both sides? Promised what? Mary Ann's voice carried like steel across the dirt. "You'll get what I owe you when I'm ready. Until then, you'll do as I say." The men cursed but mounted their horses and rode into the night. Eli stepped back inside before she saw him, his mind spinning. Who was this woman he had married? The next morning, Mary Ann acted as if nothing had happened, serving him biscuits and bacon with a smile that gave nothing away. Eli didn't confront her. Not yet. He needed to understand. Days later, the answer came crashing down on him in the form of gunfire. He was repairing a fence when he heard the thunder of hooves and the crack of rifles. A gang rode onto his land, bullets splintering wood around him. Eli dove for cover, his heart pounding. And then he saw her. Mary Ann stepped out onto the porch with a shotgun in her hands, firing with deadly accuracy. For a woman her size, she moved with shocking speed, reloading and shooting without hesitation. One man fell, then another, until the rest turned tail and fled. Eli stared at her, chest heaving, as she lowered the smoking barrel. Her eyes met his, and for the first time, he saw not a stranger, not a burden, but a woman forged of something harder than steel. That night, by the fire, she told him the truth. She had once been the wife of a notorious outlaw, a man who had beaten her, used her, and left her for dead. But she had survived. She had taken his secrets, his hidden stash of money, and fled across the country to start new. The men who came to the ranch were remnants of his gang, desperate to reclaim what she had taken. "I didn't choose you because you were desperate," she said, her voice trembling. "I chose you because you were honest. I needed a man who wouldn't sell me out, even if he married me for the wrong reasons." Eli was silent, his chest tight. He had judged her by her size, by whispers, by assumptions. But she was braver than any man he had ever known. And somewhere in the depths of his soul, something shifted. In the weeks that followed, the ranch began to thrive. Mary Ann had a sharp mind for business, striking deals with neighbors, trading goods, and managing the books with precision Eli had never possessed. Under her hand, the failing ranch began to breathe again, and Eli found himself standing taller, working harder, believing once more in the land his father had left him. But danger was never far. The outlaw gang wanted her dead, and they came again, more ruthless, more desperate. This time Eli stood beside her, rifle in hand, fighting not for land or pride, but for the woman who had turned his life upside down. When the smoke cleared and the last outlaw lay in the dirt, Eli looked at Mary Ann and felt something he hadn't expected: respect, admiration, and something far deeper that burned through the walls he had built around his heart. The poor rancher who thought he had bought himself a chance at survival had instead found a partner who shocked him in every way. She was not the burden he had feared, but the strength he had needed all along. And as the Texas sun bled red across the horizon, Eli Carter realized that sometimes the greatest fortune comes not from gold or land, but from the unexpected fire of a woman who refuses to be broken. Their marriage had begun as a transaction, a desperate deal made in shadows. But out of that bargain had risen something fierce, something unshakable, something real. And Eli knew, as he took her hand in the fading light, that he would never let her go.